The segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. Make sure you sign up for their newsletter to be alerted to opportunities to do just that in your communities. So I have talked about the attack on democracy from Washington state Democrats. As much as they want to paint conservatives and Republicans as the threat to democracy, or even Donald Trump or whatever it is, they have shown time and time again that they are very eager to consolidate their power by thwarting the will of voters. And we have seen no better example than what they did during the initiatives last year. You had a number of initiatives that were supported each by around 500,000 Washingtonians. I think it was something like 1.8 million unique voters in our state who signed on to at least one of those initiatives to send them to the voters on issues that really were common sense. And you saw people signing those initiatives right, left, and center. In fact, there were more Democrats and independents who signed those initiatives than there were Republicans. So there were broad support for those initiatives. And one of them in particular was the Parental Bill of Rights, which came about, really because parents were frustrated with all these new laws that were hurting their ability to know what's happening with their kids' lives. It's like, first it was the medical decisions, where they were expanding every single year, it seemed, the types of medical care that kids could get without parental consent and without even parental involvement of any kind. Like, there are some things your 13-year-old can go do in the state of Washington, and you as a parent, you got to pay for it. Your insurance is going to cover it, but you have no right to know what your kid went to the doctor for. Like, that's crazy stuff. And for any parent, again, of any political ideology, that's concerning. And then it was going into the schools where you could have kids who were going to school and seeing therapists or, getting connected with medical care for a variety of things, and parents would be completely kept in the dark. And so the Parental Bill of Rights initiative was wildly popular. And for that reason, Democrats in Olympia last year just decided, let's pass this initiative via the legislature, because then rather than letting it go to voters, we can turn around more quickly and unravel it. And that, of course, is what they're doing this legislative session. They signed it. And then they immediately started to attack it. And they immediately came back this session and are rewriting it where it's a shadow of of the Parental Bill of Rights that was passed. So, that's been frustrating in and of itself to watch. And now it's fallen victim to the latest effort from Democrats to shut out dissent. So you'll recall a couple months ago on the show, maybe a month and a half or so ago, Democrats changed a rule that has been on the books in the Washington state legislature for more than 100 years. And what that rule said is, while debate is happening on the floor, it would take a supermajority to end debate. So that means that even though, Republicans are in the minority, it would take a supermajority to stop them from standing up, from speaking, from making their dissent known, from introducing and debating at length amendments to Democratic bills. And so that's a healthy part of democracy, right? To have some disagreement, to have public debate, to have dissent over things. So Democrats decided that they were going to change that rule, and no longer does it take a supermajority vote to end debate. It just takes a simple majority, which, of course, who has a simple majority? Democrats do. And so at the time this happened, I think a lot of people were shocked that Democrats would do this, that they would care so little to hear any dissenting opinions, that they would change a 100-plus-year-old rule and say, at any time we want, we'll use our majority and we'll just end debate. And at the time they assured us, we'll only do that in extreme circumstances. It's probably not something that we're going to use very much. Well, they did use it, and they decided to use it on the bill to upend the Parental Bill of Rights. So if you were watching, of course, parental rights passed in the Senate, and then it was debated in the House while we were gone. And yeah, the debate was lengthy. The debate went on for some time. Republicans were trying to introduce amendments that would strengthen the bill because they know they're not going to be able to defeat it. They don't have the votes to do that. So all they can do is put forth common sense amendments and say, hey, how about this? How about this? And then debate the merits of it on the floor. So apparently Democrats were tired of listening to Republicans. Democrats were tired of hearing dissent. They were tired of hearing disagreement. And they utilized this new tool to just halt debate. here's how I want to play the video of how it looked on the floor, because all this jargon in Olympia, you might have seen this and not really understood what was going on, but essentially there was an amendment that had been introduced by Republican State Representative Jim Walsh that would have taken away the emergency clause on this, and that was sort of when Democrats just decided they had enough. So here's what it sounded like when they shut down debate on the floor.
The member from the 49th District, Representative Stonier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I demand the previous question.
Do 1/6 of the members demand the previous question? Members who demand the previous question, please stand and remain standing. Members, please be seated. At least 1/6 of the members have demanded the previous question. The ayes have it. The previous question has been ordered.
Yeah, that's what it looks like and sounds like when one party is drunk on power. Doesn't sound like much and look like much when you watch it and think, what the heck is going on? That's them shutting down debate over an amendment that they didn't want to hear any more about, and then fast-tracking the bill to upend parental rights for a vote. And it's insane when you think about it, because here's a bill that exists to override the will of voters. Here's a bill that Democrats have put forth to dismantle a voter initiative less than a year after it became law. And even though they're doing that, an initiative signed by Democratic parents, Republican parents, independent parents, they aren't even willing to sit there and listen to the concerns people have with the bill. So they just end debate. And there were a couple other speeches allowed after this. One of them was Representative Jeremy Default. He's a Republican representing the 15th District. And I give him credit because I think he knew he was in violation of the floor rules and he was going to get gavelled out of control for what he was saying. But I think in that moment he felt the need to stand up for democracy, to stand up for parents, to stand up for voters who signed on to this initiative.
This chamber has existed for over 130 years, but for the first time in its history a few moments ago, debate was silenced. Debate was censored.
Please speak to the policy. Please proceed.
This bill led to the censorship of representatives of the people of Washington State who strongly supported the initiative and who opposed this bill. The people continue to be obstructed by this chamber by not voting on.
Please do not impugn members.
Yeah. So gavelled over and over again, continues to try to shout what he was saying about the disrespect to parents in Washington State as they cut his microphone. Good for him. So I saw after this happened, there were a few news stories on it, and House Speaker Lori Jenkins was quoted in the Olympian. Give me a break. Cannot believe this quote. So asked basically, why would you shut down debate on something that really has to do with a voter initiative and a controversial thing that a lot of parents have a stake in? She said, we had over 4 hours of debate on the House floor on SB 5181, much of which was both duplicative and degrading towards transgender and other marginalized children. Washingtonians deserve a healthy debate, not a procedural delay meant to kill bills with majority support. So she is just saying that we didn't like what the other side had to say. So we've just decided 4 hours is long enough. We're going to end debate. And to say that things that we're saying were degrading towards transgender and other marginalized communities, they were not. You know, there was an amendment, I think, just to protect girls' sports. But you can't want to protect girls' sports from the inclusion of biological men because that makes you a transphobe. So anything they don't like, any pushback whatsoever. You know, one of the aspects of the Parental Bill of Rights was to say, hey, if my kid goes to school and they decide to identify as a different gender or a different name, I as a parent have a right to know. That doesn't seem very controversial to me. Like, you should be able to know if your child is going to school and everyone else, including teachers, are calling your child by a different name and referring to them as a different gender. And so Republicans sort of pushing back against that protection for kids, well, that's transphobic too. Because that's what they do. They name call and they label when they can't justify what they're doing. So in the eyes of House Speaker Lori Jenkins, Republicans were being transphobic, they were just being redundant, and we didn't need to hear anything else they had to say because this bill has majority support. So saying, We deserve a healthy debate, not a procedural delay meant to kill bills with majority support. Well, anything you put forth has majority support because you're in the majority. You have all the power in the world. You control the House, you control the Senate, you control the governor's office, you control the courts. And you can't tolerate a couple hours of the other side, of people who represent millions of Washingtonians. Even though they're in the minority, they represent millions of Washingtonians, and in this case, millions of parents. And you can't tolerate and be gracious enough for a couple hours to sit there and listen to the concerns of their constituents being shared by their elected leaders. It's absolutely disappointing, and just one more example of why one-party rule is incredibly, incredibly dangerous. That segment was brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. Make sure you sign up for their newsletter to be alerted to opportunities to do just that.